The camera opens on a trembling little girl, her tiny hands gripping a mop, her eyes filled with tears. She whispers, "Mom, when are you coming to take me home?" But her voice echoes inside a stranger's mansion. Outside, rain pounds against the windows. Across town, I'm pacing helplessly, my phone ringing nonstop. Every call is from the HOA president, Karen, the same woman who promised to help us when times were tough. But that help turned into a nightmare. Because just hours earlier, Karen had tricked us, signing papers she said were for community assistance. But what I didn't know was that she'd sold my daughter to a wealthy couple as a maid. And when I found out what she'd done, I made a silent promise. She'll regret this for the rest of her life. Hey, everyone, before I begin this unbelievable story, I want to ask, from which city are you watching this video? Speech balloon, drop your city's name down below in the comments. I love seeing where all my amazing viewers are from. Globe showing Americas. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel *** before we begin ***, because this story will shake your heart. All right, let's start. My name is Michael Turner, a single father living in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Willow Creek. Life wasn't perfect, but my 10-year-old daughter, Lily, was my entire world. She had a bright smile, golden hair, and the kind of innocence that made everyone love her. Everyone except Karen Whitmore, the newly elected HOA president. Karen was the type of woman who thought power gave her the right to control everyone's lives. From the color of our mailboxes to how long our grass could be, she ruled with an iron fist and a fake smile. When I lost my job and started falling behind on community fees, Karen appeared concerned. She offered to help me fill out some financial forms for a community assistance program. I trusted her. After all, she was our HOA leader. But I had no idea that buried within those papers were forged signatures and false agreements. Karen had used her HOA power to hand my daughter over to a wealthy couple, calling it temporary work for housing debt. That night, when I came home and found Lily missing, my world shattered. And from that moment on, I swore to find her and make Karen regret ever touching my child's life. The night everything fell apart started like any other. I remember the smell of pasta filling the kitchen, the faint sound of Lily humming as she colored at the table, and the soft evening light slipping through the curtains. For a moment, everything felt normal, peaceful even. But peace doesn't last long in a neighborhood ruled by HOA Karen Whitmore. She'd stopped by earlier that afternoon, clipboard in hand, her perfect hair pinned tight, smile stretched too wide to be real. "Michael," she said, voice dripping with fake sympathy, "we're all worried about you and little Lily. Times are tough, I know, but we can't let debts pile up. The board has standards to maintain." I remember clenching my jaw, trying to stay calm. "I told you I'm working on it, Karen. Just give me a little time." "Oh, I'm not here to pressure you," she said sweetly. "Actually, there's this new community assistance program for struggling residents. I could help you apply. It'll wipe part of your dues clean." That line, "wipe part of your dues clean," was the bait that hooked me. She pulled out a few sheets of paper, said they needed signatures for verification. I didn't read every line. I trusted that she was helping. She even patted Lily's head before leaving and said, "We'll make sure your daddy doesn't have to worry anymore, sweetheart." It sounded kind then, but hours later, those same words would echo like a curse. By 7 p.m., I realized Lily wasn't home. Her shoes were gone, her little backpack missing. At first, I thought she might have gone to her friend's house next door, but Mrs. Hayes shook her head when I knocked. "No, honey, I haven't seen her all day. Isn't she with you?" My stomach twisted. Panic clawed up my chest. I ran through every corner of the house, shouting her name, "Lily, sweetheart, come on, this isn't funny." No answer. Her tablet sat on the couch, her favorite teddy bear still on her pillow. I knew my daughter. She would never just walk away without telling me. I called the police around 8:15. The dispatcher's tone was calm but detached, asking the same questions over and over. "When was the last time you saw her? Does she have any medical conditions? Any custody issues?" "No, nothing like that." I yelled, She's 10 years old. She's missing. 2 officers showed up within the hour. They checked the yard, asked if Lily had any enemies. I almost laughed at that. Enemies? She was a child. But then Officer James looked at me seriously. You said HOA President Whitmore stopped by earlier? Did she mention taking your daughter somewhere? The question caught me off guard. What? No. Why would she? I froze mid-sentence. Because suddenly I remembered something. When Karen left that afternoon, she had said, "If I can't reach you later, don't worry, I might check in with Lily at the community office to verify the form details." At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now it felt wrong. All of it. I grabbed my keys, ignoring the officer's warning to stay put, and drove straight to the HOA office near the clubhouse. The building was dark except for one flickering light inside. I pounded on the glass door until my knuckles hurt. Finally, Karen appeared, calm, collected, holding a cup of tea. "Michael, what's the emergency? Where is my daughter?" I barked. She blinked, feigning confusion. "Your daughter? I don't know what you're— Don't lie to me." I shouted. "You said you might check on her. She's gone. She's missing." For a brief second, I saw her mask slip. Her lips twitched, eyes darting to the side. Then she quickly smiled again. "Oh dear, you must be so stressed. Maybe she went to the park? Kids wander." Her calmness made my blood boil. I leaned closer. "If you know anything, I swear. Careful, Mr. Turner," she said coldly, her voice dropping its sugarcoating. Making threats against a community official could have consequences. That's when I knew. She was hiding something. I went home that night empty-handed, the police promising to follow leads. But I couldn't sleep. My gut screamed that Karen was behind this. Around midnight, I started digging. I opened the folder she'd left earlier, the assistance papers, and what I saw nearly made me collapse. Among the printed forms were 2 additional pages, notarized documents I'd never seen before, stating that I, Michael Turner, voluntarily permitted my daughter, Lily Turner, to provide domestic work in exchange for debt reduction under the HOA's Community Service Clause. It looked legal. It looked official. And worst of all, my signature was there. But I hadn't signed that. Karen had forged my name. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I kept replaying every moment, her fake kindness, her smile, her promise to help. All eyes. By dawn, I was back in my truck, driving door to door, searching every house near the HOA office, every volunteer home care managed. At 6:30 a.m., I spotted something that froze me in place. A black SUV with tinted windows parked outside a large 2-story house at the edge of the neighborhood. And through the half-open curtains, I saw her, Lily, my little girl, wearing an oversized Maid uniform, holding a bucket, wiping a table while a woman yelled at her. My vision blurred. Rage and heartbreak hit me at once. I jumped out of the truck, pounded on the door until my fists turned red. A man answered, tall, dressed in a suit. "Can I help you?" "Where's my daughter?" I shouted. "She's 10 years old. You have no right." The man scowled. "Your daughter? That child is under a legal service agreement. You must be mistaken." Before I could respond, 2 HOA security guards appeared, Karen's guards. They blocked me from entering, warning me to leave before trespassing charges were filed. I screamed Lily's name. She turned toward the window, tears streaking her face, and then the curtains shut. I was dragged off the property. That night, something inside me changed. The law wasn't helping. The HOA was corrupt, and my daughter was trapped in a stranger's home because of forged documents and greed. So I made a vow, if the system wouldn't bring her back, I would. Karen had no idea what kind of storm she had started, because by the next day, I wasn't just a desperate father anymore. I was a man on a mission, and Karen Whitmore was about to learn what regret truly means. The morning sun felt cruel that day. It painted the streets of Willow Creek gold, but to me, the light was just a reminder that another day had passed and my daughter was still gone. I hadn't slept in 2 nights. My hands shook from exhaustion and anger, my mind looping through every possible way to bring her home. The police had taken my report, but I could tell they didn't believe me. They kept saying, "It's a misunderstanding," or "You must have signed something without realizing it." I could almost hear Karen whispering her poison behind closed doors. The HOA had influence, deep connections with city officials, police liaisons, even local judges. She wasn't just powerful, she was untouchable. But she made one mistake. She underestimated a father's will. I began my search the only way I could, by following the paper trail. I went back to the HOA office the next morning. Karen wasn't there, but her assistant, a timid young man named Evan, was sorting files. He looked up nervously when I entered. "Mr. Turner," he stammered, "I don't think you're supposed to be." I slammed a photo of Lily on the desk. "Where is she, Evan?" He froze. The fear in his eyes said enough. He knew something. "Please, I could lose my job," he whispered. I leaned in closer. "You're already part of this. She's 10 years old, Evan. 10. And your boss sold her." He swallowed hard, glancing toward the office door. Then, in a trembling voice, he said, "Karen, she works with the Kensingtons. They're rich, connected people. She sends them girls from families who can't pay their dues. She calls it a community work exchange, but it's not work. It's slavery." My stomach turned. "Where are they now?" Evan hesitated. "There's a file in the cabinet behind you. Third drawer, blue folder." I found it. Inside were lists of names, homeowners, children, addresses. Lily's name was there. Next to it, work placement, Kensington Residence, 45 Stonebrook Lane. Before I could thank him, I heard the sharp click of heels approaching. Karen's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Well, if it isn't our resident drama king." I turned slowly. There she stood, elegant as ever, holding her coffee mug, acting like she owned the world. "You've crossed a line," she said coldly. "Breaking into HOA property? That's a federal offense." "I'm just looking for my daughter," I growled. "You forged documents, Karen. You tricked me." She smiled, that same fake smile that used to fool me. "You signed those papers willingly. Maybe you should have read the fine print." My blood boiled. "Where is she?" Karen stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Do yourself a favor, Michael. Drop this. You're broke, desperate, and no one's going to believe a man like you over someone like me." I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. "You think money and lies will protect you forever?" Her smirk widened. "Forever? No, but long enough." That was the moment I realized she wasn't scared of the law, because she was the law here. Everyone bowed to her power. Everyone except me. I left the office before I did something I'd regret. But I took the blue folder with me. Back home, I started contacting every name listed under Community Work Program. Most didn't answer. A few who did hung up the moment I mentioned Karen. But one woman, Grace Miller, whispered nervously into the phone. "Mr. Turner, I know what you're going through. Karen did the same thing to my niece last year. Promised my sister temporary work to reduce HOA dues. The girl never came back. Where is she now?" I asked. "Rumor is she was sent to the Kensingtons too. Those people are dangerous. They pay the HOA under the table." Her voice cracked. "Be careful, Mr. Turner. People who go against Karen disappear." That warning should have stopped me, but it didn't. It only fueled me more. That night, I parked my truck across from the Kensington mansion again. The massive property looked peaceful from afar. Fairy lights wrapped around trees, a fountain trickling softly in the yard. But I knew the darkness behind that beauty. Through binoculars, I saw movement inside, 2 adults at the dinner table, laughing, glasses of wine in hand, and then a small figure appeared near the kitchen. My heart nearly burst. It was Lily. She was scrubbing the floor, wearing a gray apron, her little hands trembling as she worked. Every few minutes, the woman at the table, Mrs. Kensington, would snap her fingers and Lily would rush to refill her glass. I felt my heart shatter and ignite all at once. I wanted to storm in, kick the door down, and carry her out. But if I did that without proof, they'd call the police, and Karen's people would make sure I ended up in jail for trespassing and harassment. So instead, I grabbed my phone. I recorded everything, zoomed in captured Lily's face, her uniform, the Kensingtons in the background. That night, I gathered evidence. Over the next few days, I returned again and again, recording, documenting, even catching Karen arriving once in her white Lexus. She walked into the house with a briefcase, stayed 10 minutes, and left smiling. That was the final piece of the puzzle. Now I had proof. But the problem wasn't gathering evidence, it was getting anyone to listen. When I took the footage to the local precinct, the officer on duty gave me a sympathetic but tired look. "Mr. Turner, these are serious allegations. But without an official warrant or signed complaint, there's not much we can do. I have evidence," I yelled, slamming my phone on the desk. "You can see my daughter in their house." He sighed. "Do you have proof she's being held against her will? Maybe she's working there legally. You signed the documents." My fists trembled. Those documents were forged. He looked away. "Then get a lawyer." I left the station shaking with fury. They were all protecting her. Every last one. That night, as I sat alone in my dark living room, staring at the blue folder, an idea came to me. If the system was too blind to see the truth, I'd make the world see it. I called an old friend, Tony, a freelance journalist who'd covered local corruption stories. I told him everything. He didn't believe me at first, until I sent him the videos. "Jesus, Mike," he muttered over the phone. "This is insane. If what you're saying is true, this could bring down the entire HOA board." "Then help me," I said. "Help me expose her." He agreed. Together, we planned to leak the story, the videos, the documents, everything. But first, he needed one final confirmation shot, a clip showing Karen herself handing off payment for Lily's work. That meant one thing: I had to get inside the Kensington mansion. The night I decided to break in, rain poured like the heavens were warning me. I wore black, carried nothing but my phone, and my heart pounded like a war drum. I waited until midnight, slipped through the side fence, and crept toward the back door. The lights were low, the family asleep. Through the window, I saw Lily curled up on a small cot near the kitchen. My chest tightened. She looked so small, so fragile. I quietly turned the handle, unlocked. I slipped inside, moving like a shadow. But before I could reach her, a sharp voice sliced through the silence. Well, look who decided to visit." Karen's voice. She stepped out from the dark hallway. Umbrella still wet from the rain, eyes glinting coldly. "I told you to let it go," she whispered. "Now you've really done it." And behind her, 2 HOA security men appeared, holding batons. The trap had been set, but I wasn't backing down this time. Not when my daughter was right there. Karen's shadow stretched across the marble floor like a serpent, slithering closer with every step. My breath caught in my throat. Lily was barely 5 feet away, curled up, trembling, clutching her blanket as her eyes darted between me and the woman who had destroyed our lives. Karen smiled, that cold, rehearsed grin I'd seen 1,000 times. "Well, this is dramatic," she said softly. "Breaking and entering Michael? You never did learn how to follow rules. Where is your humanity, Karen?" I hissed. "She's 10 years old. You sold her." Her smirk deepened. "Sold? That's such an ugly word. She's working. Learning responsibility. You should be thanking me." My fists clenched. "You forged documents. You kidnapped my daughter." Karen raised an eyebrow. "I did what the law allowed. You signed, remember? And every paper was notarized. You don't have a leg to stand on." Behind her, the 2 HOA guards stepped forward, both tall, built like bouncers, holding batons. One of them muttered, "Should we call the cops?" Karen shook her head. "No, I'll handle this myself." That smug confidence sent fire through my veins. "Don't come any closer," I warned. "You lay a hand on me, and the police will see this." I raised my phone, flashing the live recording icon. Karen froze for a second, her smile faltering. "What do you think you're doing?" "Streaming this," I said, "straight to my friend's news server. Every word you say, every threat you make, every face in this house, it's being uploaded right now." Her eyes widened. "You're bluffing." "Try me." She took a sharp breath, glancing at her guards. They hesitated. Then Lily whimpered, "Daddy, please, that sound broke me." I lunged forward, grabbing her hand. Karen's voice snapped like a whip, "Stop him." The guards charged, one swung his baton. I ducked, grabbing a lamp and smashing it against the man's wrist. He yelled, stumbling back. The second one grabbed my arm, but adrenaline made me stronger than I'd ever been. I rammed him into the wall, knocking the breath out of him. Karen screamed, "You're insane." I shouted back, "I'm a father." I scooped Lily into my arms. She clung to my neck, sobbing, "I missed you, Daddy." "I've got you, baby," I whispered. "I've got you." Karen rushed to block the doorway, her perfect hair now a mess, her calm gone. "You're not leaving. If you take her, you'll be arrested for kidnapping your own daughter." I stared her dead in the eye. "Then arrest me." And with that, I pushed past her, the sound of her furious screaming echoing behind me as I bolted through the back door into the rain. The storm outside mirrored the chaos in my heart. Thunder rolled across the sky as I strapped Lily into the truck. She was shaking, eyes wide with fear. "It's okay," I told her, gripping her hand. "You're safe now." But deep down, I knew we weren't safe yet. Karen wasn't the kind of monster who stopped. She'd come after us, legally, financially, any way she could. I drove straight to Tony's place, the journalist friend. He opened the door in disbelief when he saw us drenched and trembling. "Mike, holy hell, she's here," I gasped. "Lily's safe, but Karen knows I have proof. She's going to spin this. We need to act now." Tony ushered us in. "You got her on camera?" "Everything. Her threats. Her guards. Even Lily in that house." He nodded grimly. "Then we go public." Within hours, Tony was editing the footage, combining it with the earlier clips, Karen's visits, her fake program, the documents with forged signatures. He blurred Lily's face for safety. When he finished, he uploaded the video to his news site with the headline, "HOA President Exposed for Selling Children AS Community Workers." The video went viral overnight. By morning, it was on national news. People were outraged, demanding investigations, flooding the HOA hotline, sharing Karen's face everywhere. But while the world reacted, Karen retaliated. At 9 a.m., two police cars screeched to a halt outside Tony's house. Officers surrounded us, shouting for me to step outside. "You're under arrest for trespassing, assault, and unlawful custody," one of them barked. Tony rushed out, waving his press badge. "You can't arrest him, he exposed a crime." But the officers ignored him. As they handcuffed me, I locked eyes with Lily, who was crying again. "It's okay," I whispered. "It's going to be okay." I was taken away, Karen's smirk flashing in my mind. The holding cell was cold and silent, except for the buzzing fluorescent light above. I sat there for hours, replaying everything. I'd saved my daughter, but somehow, Karen still had control. Then, just before noon, a familiar voice came from the hallway. "Mr. Turner?" It was Officer James, the same one who dismissed me before. But now his tone was different, softer, cautious. "You're free to go," he said. "All charges dropped." I blinked. "What? Why?" He looked uneasy. "Because the mayor's office just called. Apparently, the governor's wife saw the video last night. She's demanding a full investigation into Karen Whitmore and the HOA." My knees almost buckled. "So, it worked?" He nodded. "More than you know. The FBI's already involved." When I stepped out of the station, Tony and Lily were waiting. She ran into my arms, crying into my chest. Tony grinned, holding up his phone. "You're trending, man. They just raided Karen's office." He played a short clip, agents in jackets marked FBI carrying boxes of files out of the HOA building. Karen was in handcuffs, shouting at reporters, mascara running down her face. "This is a mistake. I was helping the community." The irony was almost poetic. Lily looked up at me teary-eyed. "Daddy, is the bad lady going to jail?" I smiled weakly. "Yeah, sweetheart. For a long, long time." Later that week, I was asked to testify. I told the whole story, from the fake papers to the night I found Lily. The courtroom was packed, cameras flashing. Karen sat across from me, pale and shaking, her lawyer whispering frantically in her ear. At one point, the judge asked her, Did you or did you not authorize the placement of minors under false debt agreements? Karen tried to lie, but Tony's footage sealed her fate. The audio of her saying she's working, "You should thank me," played for everyone to hear. Gasps filled the room. Karen broke down, crying, begging for leniency, but it was too late. When the verdict came, the judge's voice was firm. Guilty on all counts: fraud, forgery, child exploitation, and unlawful confinement. Karen screamed as officers took her away. I didn't feel triumph, only relief. That evening, I took Lily to her favorite diner, the one with the strawberry pancakes she loved. For the first time in months, I saw her smile again. Are we going home now? She asked quietly. Yeah, I said, brushing her hair back. No more HOA, no more rules, no more Karen. She giggled softly. Can we move somewhere with no mean ladies? I chuckled. Yeah, baby. Somewhere peaceful. Maybe near the ocean. Outside, rain had finally stopped. The sky was clearing, streaked with gold. Lily rested her head on my shoulder, whispering, You came for me. And I whispered back, Always. That night, as I tucked her into bed, I looked out the window, the neighborhood quiet for the first time in years. Justice had been served. But more than that, I'd learned that no system, no power, no HOA rule could ever break a parent's love, because when you fight for what's right, even monsters like Karen eventually fall. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and tension. Every seat was filled: reporters, neighbors, HOA members, even former victims' families. Flashbulbs popped each time the doors creaked. The once invincible HOA president, Karen Whitmore, sat at the defendant's table, her expensive blazer wrinkled, makeup smudged, and her arrogance replaced by a ghostly panic. For months, she'd terrorized families with rules, fines, and lies. But today, her world was collapsing in front of cameras. I sat across from her, my daughter's small hand clutched tightly in mine. Lily wore a yellow ribbon in her hair, the same one she'd been wearing the day she disappeared. She refused to take it off, saying it reminded her of home. The judge entered, gavel striking the block with authority. Court is now in session for the state versus Karen Whitmore. Charges: forgery, fraud, child trafficking, coercion, and abuse of power. The murmurs in the room died instantly. Karen's attorney, a slick man in a Navy suit, stood up. Your Honor, my client is a respected community leader. This entire case is built on emotional manipulation and exaggeration. She's guilty of poor judgment at worst, not criminal intent. The prosecutor, District Attorney Monroe, rose calmly. Poor judgment, she repeated, flipping through her papers. Let's talk about her poor judgment, starting with the forged documents signed under Michael Turner's name. She held up a folder. On the projector screen, the image of my falsified signature appeared. The audience gasped. Monroe continued, Experts confirm this signature was electronically traced. Miss Whitmore used HOA letterhead to disguise illegal labor agreements, exchanging children for debt reduction. That is not poor judgment, Your Honor. That is modern-day slavery. The judge's expression darkened. Proceed. When it was my turn to testify, my hands trembled as I stood before the court. Cameras zoomed in, and I could feel Karen's eyes on me. Sharp, hateful, desperate. Mr. Turner, Monroe began, Can you explain how you discovered your daughter was taken? I took a deep breath. Karen came to my home pretending to help with debt relief. She gave me papers to sign. I trusted her. That night, my daughter disappeared. When I confronted her, she lied. I later found my daughter working in a mansion, scrubbing floors for strangers. She was terrified. Monroe nodded. Did Miss Whitmore ever admit to placing your daughter there? Yes, I said, glaring at Karen. She said, She's working. You should thank me. Those words are burned into my memory. Karen slammed her hands on the table. That's a lie. The judge banged the gavel. Order. Miss Whitmore, control yourself. I turned toward Karen. You didn't just ruin my life. You ruined others too. Monroe stepped in. Yes, Your Honor, we have other witnesses. One by one, people took the stand, mothers, fathers, even a retired HOA clerk. Each told a similar story. She said my daughter would help with community service for late fees. She told me it was part of the Clean Streets initiative. My son never came home. She made us sign papers without reading them. Every testimony hit Karen like a hammer to her crumbling image. Then came the most shocking moment of all. Monroe called the next witness. The state calls Evan Pierce to the stand. Karen's head snapped toward the door. Evan, her former assistant, walked in, visibly shaking. "You were Miss Whitmore's office assistant, correct?" Monroe asked. "Yes," Evan replied, voice trembling. "I handled the paperwork, the so-called community work agreements. But one day, I saw payments being transferred from wealthy families to an unlisted HOA account. Karen said it was for maintenance funds, but when I checked the records, there were no invoices. The money was labeled under the children's names." The courtroom gasped. Monroe pressed. "So you're saying the defendant profited directly from these child labor schemes?" "Yes." She even said, and I quote, "If the parents can't pay in money, their kids can pay in time." Karen jumped to her feet, shouting, "That's not true. He's lying to save himself." The judge's gavel thundered. "Miss Whitmore, one more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt." But the damage was done. Her empire was collapsing, not from one man's anger, but from the truth. Over the next week, evidence piled up. Bank transfers, hidden HOA accounts, video clips of Karen entering homes with contracts, and testimony from other HOA members who confessed to being pressured or bribed. Tony's footage, my friend's recordings, played a key role. The screen showed Karen standing in the Kensington mansion, saying the very words she denied. "She's working. You should thank me." The courtroom went silent. Karen's eyes filled with tears, not of remorse, but of panic. Monroe turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen the footage. You've heard the testimonies. This isn't just a case of corruption, it's cruelty disguised as community service. Miss Whitmore exploited power to destroy families." When the prosecutor finished, Karen's lawyer tried one last desperate move. She was helping struggling families. Maybe she crossed lines, but her intentions weren't criminal. The judge leaned forward. "Selling children for personal gain is not helping, counselor." The lawyer sat down, defeated. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The foreman stood. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all counts." Karen gasped, shaking her head violently. "No, you can't do this. I built this community. You're all ungrateful." The gavel came down hard. "Order. Miss Whitmore, you are hereby sentenced to 35 years in federal prison without parole." As the officers took her away, she screamed, "I'll appeal. You'll all regret this." But her words were drowned by the sound of applause, not of celebration but relief. Parents hugged their children. Neighbors cried. Reporters swarmed the aisles. Lily looked up at me with wide eyes. "Is she gone, Daddy?" I knelt down and smiled through tears. "She's gone, sweetheart. She can't hurt anyone anymore." A week later, I was invited to a community meeting, the first without Karen's leadership. The new HOA president, a humble man named Mr. Adams, stood before the crowd. "On behalf of Willow Creek, I want to apologize to every family hurt by this corruption," he said. "We're dismantling every policy she created, and the community work program will never exist again." People clapped. For the first time, the HOA wasn't feared, it was human again. Tony approached me after the meeting, smiling. "You did it, man. You brought down a monster." I shook my head. "No, we did it. Every parent who spoke up, every neighbor who refused to stay silent, they did it." He grinned. "Still, not every dad goes toe-to-toe with the HOA from hell." I laughed weakly. "Guess I'm not every dad." That night, I tucked Lily into bed again. She held my hand and whispered, "Do you think she's sorry now?" I sighed. "I think she's finally realizing what she did wrong. That's enough." Outside, the wind rustled the trees softly. The neighborhood, once a place of fear, finally felt like home again. For the first time since that nightmare began, I could breathe freely. Because justice had spoken, and the world had heard our story. The world outside the courtroom changed overnight. What started as a local HOA scandal exploded into national headlines. News anchors called it the Willow Creek exploitation scandal. Hashtags like hashtag Justice for Lily and hashtag HOA Reform Now trended across social media. Talk shows debated how an ordinary neighborhood president had run a modern-day trafficking ring under the guise of community service. Every time I turned on the TV, I saw my daughter's ribboned silhouette blurred in the footage, my voice narrating how I'd found her, and Karen's arrest replaying like poetic justice. But fame wasn't what I wanted, I just wanted peace. Still, it was strange seeing the world finally acknowledge what no one had believed months ago. The same officers who once dismissed my calls were now giving public apologies. Politicians issued statements condemning systemic HOA abuse. The governor himself ordered a review of every HOA in the state. For the first time, it felt like justice had ripple effects. But beneath that victory, the healing wasn't easy. Lily had nightmares for weeks. She'd wake up crying, whispering that the mean lady was coming back. Sometimes she'd flinch when the doorbell rang. I spent countless nights holding her close, whispering, "No one will ever hurt you again, baby. I promise." Therapists called it trauma response, said it would take time. I didn't care how long. I was ready to wait forever if it meant she'd feel safe again. We moved out of Willow Creek. I sold the house. Every memory of those streets burned too deep to bear. Our new home was a small cottage by the coast, 2 hours away. No HOA. No neighbors watching over fences, just the sound of the ocean and gulls overhead. The first morning there, Lily stood barefoot on the sand, watching the waves. She smiled, a small, fragile smile, but real. "It smells like freedom," she said. That single sentence felt like sunlight after years of storm. Meanwhile, the world kept watching Karen Whitmore's downfall. Her mug shot went viral, her once perfect hair disheveled, her eyes wide with disbelief. People compared her before and after photos online, calling her the face of false perfection. Inside prison, she tried to play victim. Rumors spread that she filed appeal after appeal, but every court dismissed them. Even her husband divorced her, and the HOA board was completely dissolved. Months later, Tony, my journalist friend, published a follow-up exposé. Inside the mind of HOA Karen, the woman who sold her neighbors. He'd interviewed former board members who revealed Karen's obsession with power. She'd once bragged, "I can make or break families with a pen stroke." Those words came back to haunt her. The article ended with a line that hit me hard. "Power without empathy always ends in self-destruction." I cut that line out and taped it to Lily's mirror, not as a warning, but as a reminder. In the following months, something incredible began happening across the country. Families who had suffered under corrupt HOAs started speaking up. Communities formed support groups, and a new nonprofit launched called the Lily Foundation, dedicated to protecting children from community-level exploitation and fraud. Tony called me one night. "Guess what? The foundation's board wants you to be their spokesperson." I laughed. "Me? I'm no speaker." "You're the reason it exists," he said. "Your story changed laws. People listen when a father speaks from truth." After thinking it over, I agreed. And a month later, I found myself standing on a small stage in front of hundreds of people, parents, activists, journalists, all waiting to hear the story that had once been my nightmare. I took a deep breath and said, "My name is Michael Turner. I'm not a hero. I'm just a father who refused to give up." The audience was silent. I could see tears in some eyes, heads nodding in quiet solidarity. When power and greed take over kindness, I continued, it's up to ordinary people, neighbors, parents, friends, to fight back. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it smiles at you from across the picket fence. The applause was thunderous. Lily ran up after the speech, hugging me tight. "You sounded brave, Daddy," she said. I smiled, kneeling down. "You made me brave, sweetheart." Months passed, and life slowly found rhythm again. Lily started school near the coast. On her first day, she stood confidently at the gate, waving goodbye. I stayed there a long time, watching her laugh with other kids, thinking how fragile and strong she was all at once. That evening, We watched the sunset together from our porch. She looked up at me and said, "You know what I learned, Daddy?" "What's that?" I asked. "That bad people can take your home, but not your heart." Her words struck deep, wiser than her years. I hugged her close. "You're right, baby. That's something no one can steal." A few weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail, stamped with the state seal. Inside was an official statement of appreciation for exceptional courage, moral strength, and the pursuit of justice in the face of adversity. The governor's office recognizes Michael and Lily Turner for their contribution to state child protection reform. I stared at it for a long time, not out of pride, but disbelief. For so long, I'd been a man shouting into the void, unheard, unseen. Now, the same system that ignored me was thanking me. I hung the certificate quietly in Lily's room. She grinned and said, "Does this mean we're famous?" I chuckled. "No, sweetheart. It means we survived." Meanwhile, reports from the prison trickled in through the news. Karen had become a recluse, isolated, shunned even by other inmates. One guard anonymously said she spent her days muttering about ungrateful neighbors and stolen reputations. But to me, her punishment wasn't prison. It was irrelevance. The world had moved on without her. The power she once wielded meant nothing now. I didn't hate her anymore. Hate was heavy, and I'd carried enough weight. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant freeing myself from the past she built around me. So one morning I wrote her a letter I never sent. "Karen, I don't forgive what you did, but I refuse to let it define us. You took everything, and somehow that helped us find what truly matters. We are free, and you'll never understand what that feels like." I folded it, placed it in a box with the blue folder, the same one that started it all, and locked it away. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Lily looked up at the sky and asked, "Do you think the stars forgive people too?" I smiled gently. Maybe they don't forgive, but they remind us to keep shining, even after the darkness. She leaned on my shoulder, whispering, "Then I'll shine extra bright." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the sound of waves and the smell of salt air, I realized we'd made it. Not rich, not famous, but free. Free from fear. Free from Karen. Free to live again. A full year passed since that terrible chapter of our lives ended. The air felt different now, lighter, cleaner. Lily's laughter had replaced the silence that once haunted our home, and every morning, the sound of waves hitting the shore reminded me that freedom isn't quiet, it's peaceful. Life had started to heal us in slow, gentle ways. I'd found part-time work as a mechanic, something simple but honest. Lily loved to visit the garage after school, sitting on a stool with her drawing pad while I worked. She'd always draw us together, smiling, holding hands, sometimes with a big sun shining above. But deep down, I knew there was still one piece of our story unfinished, the final act of justice. It came unexpectedly one afternoon. Tony called me. His voice was serious, almost hesitant. "Mike, have you seen the news?" "No," I said, wiping grease off my hands. "What happened?" He paused. "Karen Whitmore. She collapsed in prison this morning. Heart failure." I froze. "Is she gone?" "Died on the way to the hospital." The words hung heavy in the air. For a long moment, I said nothing. The woman who'd destroyed so many lives, who'd smiled while doing it, was gone. Tony continued. "Report says she'd been isolated for weeks. No visitors, no family. They found her old HOA badge under her pillow." I sat down, staring at the floor. There was no joy, no satisfaction, just silence. The kind that comes after thunder. "Are you okay?" Tony asked quietly. "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me thought justice meant watching her rot behind bars. But now, I just feel empty. "Maybe that is justice," he said. "She spent her final days alone, with nothing but her guilt." That night, after dinner, I sat with Lily on the porch. She was drawing stars again, her little feet swinging off the bench. "Daddy," she said softly, "I saw the lady from the news, the one who hurt people. Is she gone?" I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. She won't be coming back." She looked down, quiet for a while. Then she whispered, Do you think she's sorry now? I looked out at the sea, where the horizon melted into twilight. Maybe. But even if she isn't, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we are safe. We're free. And we'll never let anyone take that from us again. Lily leaned against me, her voice barely a whisper. You saved me. I smiled through the ache in my chest. No, sweetheart. You saved me. You gave me something to fight for when I thought I'd lost everything. In the weeks that followed, news outlets moved on to other stories. The world forgot about Karen Whitmore, but the Lilly Foundation continued to grow. They invited me to speak again, this time at a statewide conference for family rights and HOA reform. I didn't want to go at first. I wasn't a politician or a preacher, just a father. But Tony convinced me. Mike, people need to hear what strength looks like, real strength. So a month later, I stood on a stage again, lights in my face, crowd hushed and waiting. I took a deep breath, remembering everything we'd survived. When I started this journey, I was just a man trying to pay bills and raise a daughter. I never imagined I'd end up fighting a war against my own neighborhood. A soft murmur rippled through the audience. I learned something the hard way. I continued. Evil doesn't always hide in dark alleys. Sometimes it lives in bright houses, smiles at you over fences, and tells you it's for your own good. But no matter how powerful someone seems, truth is stronger. The audience erupted in applause. I paused, holding up a hand, and I also learned that justice isn't about revenge. It's about restoring what was broken, our peace, our trust, our hope. My daughter taught me that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to live again. By the end of the speech, half the crowd was in tears. Parents came forward afterward, hugging me, sharing their own stories. One mother whispered, "Your fight gave me courage to stand up for my son." That I realized was the real redemption, not seeing Karen punished, but seeing others freed. Months later, I received an anonymous letter at our cottage. No return address, just a single page written in shaky handwriting. I watched your speech online. I knew Karen years ago. She wasn't always like that. Power made her cruel. I think she wanted to matter, but she forgot how. I hope you and your daughter find peace, something she never did. There was no signature, just an old HOA logo at the bottom. I folded the letter slowly, placed it in the same box with the blue folder and the unsent note to Karen. Then I closed it for good, locking away the pain that once ruled our lives. One evening, Lily and I visited the beach after sunset. The sky was dark velvet sprinkled with stars. She was quiet for a long while, then pointed to the horizon and said, "That one's for you." "For me?" I smiled. "Which one?" "The bright one," she said. "It's your star, because you never stopped looking for me." Tears stung my eyes. "And that one next to it," I said, pointing, "that's yours, because you never stopped shining, even when everything went dark." She giggled and took my hand. Together, we watched the waves roll in and out, like time erasing footprints, leaving only peace behind. As the months turned to years, people stopped calling me the man who took down the HOA. I was just Dad again, cooking burnt pancakes on Sunday morning, fixing bikes, teaching Lily how to skip stones. Every now and then, someone would recognize me at the store or thank me for what I did. I always smiled and said, "It wasn't me, it was every parent who refuses to stay silent." Because that's the truth. It's not about being a hero. It's about never giving up on the people you love. If you're watching this right now, take a moment and look around your own life. Sometimes evil doesn't roar, it whispers. It hides behind rules, smiles, and paperwork. But you have the power to speak up, to protect what matters. Speech Balloon, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And if you've ever fought against something unfair, share your story below. Your voice might give someone else the courage to fight, too. And if this story touched your heart, hit subscribe, because every week we tell real, powerful stories that remind the world. Justice isn't about punishment, it's about redemption. Because in the end, even the darkest storm can lead to a brighter dawn.